So are we screwed for 10?
Yep. We don't do one. Okay. So here's something to know. When you see small letters, such as, I'm going to go like B, that is a side. And uppercase letters, we're going to go angles. And you should note the relationship is, if this is angle B, then that across from it is considered the side B. Okay, and I could do this with anything. I could call it T or Z or whatever, but understand that's always the relationship. Okay, so the first thing here is just figuring out how to use this formula. So this is the formula, and it would always kind of set up like this. Okay, so here is asking me to figure out a side. That's what I've been asked to figure out. So in math, when you have two fractions equal to two fractions, you can always use a strategy called cross multiply. Okay, so when I cross multiply, I always do what to connect diagonally. So those connect on a diagonal, so I'm going to multiply them together. And this one is lonely, it's the leftover, and I'm just going to divide. So this is a type into your calculator. So I'm going to grab my calculator, and I just worked with grade 12s. So I have something funny up here. You have to make sure at the top of your calculator that you're going to be in degrees or D. Somebody might have just a D at the top. Is there anybody who does not have a calculator with them? You're good?
Hey, that's euro.
Okay, so this is what it looks like. 10 times sine 30. If you have a bracket calculator, then yours would go bracket 30 bracket. If you have that. If you have a brackety calculator. Divide by sine 80. Can we all practice that? And we should get 5.08.
5.077.
Yay, nay? Were we able to manipulate that in our calculator? Okay, so looking at the second example like this, here's what I'm doing again. I'm saying, what are my diagonals? So those get multiplied. Those get multiplied. Okay, now what's the one that's lonely? 12. So I divide. Okay, and then I'm trying to figure out H. What is H representing? An angle. So to get angles, you're going to have to push inverse button. Okay, so these are the things I'm going to do. This times this, divide by the lonely one, then that's what I get for sine H. So to get H, I have to sine inverse. So that's the rule. If you get an angle, you got to be pushing inverse at the very end of your calculator. Okay? You should use this button called the answer button because A, it saves you time. You should never retype stuff. That's just a time waster. And then it avoids rounding errors as well. Okay? So times diagonal, divide by lonely, second sine equals
Can you show me my answer button?
okay, and I'm gonna walk around here for calculator help if we
I did sine of 53.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look for connectors. So these are called pairs with each other. Why are they pairs? Because they are a side and an angle opposite of each other, like that. Okay, does that make sense? That's a pair. Then I'm going to do this with that. That's another pair. And the question says figure out the side C. So side C is where? Across angle C. Pair. No, don't say that. Why can't you say Pythagorean theorem? Because Pythagorean theorem works in right triangles only. So in grade 10, you learned SOHCAHTOA and Pythagorean theorem, but in grade 10, you only did right triangles, okay? So don't do that unless it's a right triangle. So this is not. Okay, here's my setup. 30 is across from sine 87 degree. Do you see how I connected those together? 30, sine 87. Okay, now you have to do another ratio. So what does the other ratio look like as a pair? C over sine 53. Okay, so the fractions have to make pairs and pairs. Okay, now we do cross multiply. So what am I multiply? Multiply a diagonal. Whatever connects diagonally. Divide by the third item. Am I pushing sine inverse or no? Yay or nay? No. Why am I not having to push sine? Because I'm figuring out a side. So 30 times sine 53, divide sine 87. Are we matching? Did we nail our calculator? 23.99.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, you did it. That's why you didn't give me an answer. Well, I thought you had to do that across, like, because that's across and that's across. This is bottom, this is top. This is bottom, this is top.
Okay, next example. Okay, I'm going to look for a pair. Okay, so I figured out a pair. That's a partner that I can do. And I can do this as I cross from each other as well. And it says to figure out the measure of R. So I'm trying to figure out that angle in there. That's my goal. So I guess what I already know on my calculator. Sine inversing something right at the end. Okay, so here's my setup. 11 over sine 80, partner pair.
How do you know you're inversing?
Because my goal is to get an angle answered. So whenever you're looking for angles, you're always going to be doing an inverse. And when you do a side, you won't be pushing inverse. Okay, everybody's good with that partner, my yellow partner. So then what does my pink partnership look like? 8.8 over sine R. That's my figure out. So do you see now why I'd have to push sine inverse? Because eventually I want this alone. How do I get rid of its connection? If it's connected to a sine, how do you get rid of stuff in math? Opposite operations. So what's the opposite of sine? Sine inverse, right? And then it would get rid of this. So that's the goal. Okay, so here's my steps. Times diagonals. Divide by the lonely. Sine inverse. And then you're using that answer button again. So see if you can get a matching answer to your table partners here.
Is that the answer, Mitch? Yeah.
Times diagonal, divide lonely, angle, sine inverse. Yay? Do we like that answer? We got there?
So how do I know this is sine law? Like, you're not like, I don't.
Because we're going to learn that sine law is always when you have pairs.
Okay. I'm ahead of myself.
You're ahead of yourself, yeah. Anything with pairs is the sine part. Okay. This last example says we have to figure out every single side, every single angle. So here's where I'm starting. I'm going to activate a pair. That's my pair that is the boss. That's the whole, I'm going to base everything off of that pair. Okay, so now I have this 13 is a side. So which angle would it pair to? That. Can we give it a letter? I don't care what letter we give it. You guys, let's go crazier than ABC. X. X. Okay, X. All right. So can you get me the angle X? What are you going to be pushing in your calculator? If this X is an angle, you're going to make sure you're doing some kind of sine inverse. Okay, so here's my setup. 16 across sine 70, partner.
It does matter then, Mitch.
13 across from sine angle X. There's my partners. I need a fraction partner and another fraction partner. Okay, do you find your diagonals? Times. Divide the other thing that was lonely. Sine inverse. Okay, so those are your moves.
Yep.
Times diagonal. Divide lonely. Sine inverse. Yay, nay, 49.8. We like it? Because it was 7.7, so I just... Yep. Okay, here's the next maneuver I'm going to do, and you're pros at this from last unit. How many angles are inside a triangle altogether? 180. So what could you figure out right now for me then? I need you to get me this angle. Can you figure out that angle using just 180? Do you see a triangle? So 60.2 degrees. Okay, so that was my next move. I just did 180 and I subtracted the other two corners. I got a third corner. Okay, so my last missing piece is I want to know this side of the triangle now. Okay, do you see my color code here? There's its partner. I'm going to give it a letter. I can't use X, so can we just pick a different letter? Y. Sure. Okay, so now here's my partner. You know what I'm going to use as my original partner? I'm going to go with this yellow. I'm always going back to the original. Okay, so 16 sine 70 is a partner. And now on my paper, I got my blue partnership. So I got to write this blue partnership down. So it would go like this, Y and sine 60.2. Do you see it visually? There's the yellow partner to the blue partner. Times, divide, and inverse or not inverse? Not. It is a side. Oh, I did something wrong here.
How do you get that, right?
14 point.
How did you get that?
Hold on, boys. Let me try one more time.
Yeah, I got something funny when I first did it too, which I had like 0.1 something, which meant
15 times.
I realized I did something wrong because your answers need to make sense, right? If I had an answer that came out to be 150, would that look very awkward to the other sides? Probably, right? Like, kind of understand your triangle. Does it make sense?